So what happens after you actually start to make the neural tube and start to form the beginnings of the actual spinal cord? Here's a nice little image here that shows you diagrammatically what it looks like, and then we also have some electron micrograph images showing the process of neurulation happening and the beginnings of a spinal cord actually forming. Remember, I mentioned in a previous video, go to YouTube and look up neurulation animation so you can actually see how this process is actually happening with some people that can do graphic animation much better than I can, and with real images showing a series of electron micrographs set in sequence so you can see what's actually happening in 3D. Really cool stuff. So you know about differentiation, and this is a good place that's going to tie in a whole bunch of different topics that you've studied already. So all the way back at the beginning in topic 1, you learned about stem cells, being able to differentiate and turn into other types of cells. These diagrams right here shouldn't be too unfamiliar to you. This is a nerve cell. You should be able to identify the dendrites, the axon body, the nodes of Ranvier, the axon terminals, and how this is all going to kind of form together. So in the neural tube, these cells will start to divide and differentiate to become specialized neurons. These neurons can be sensory neurons or motor neurons. We're going to see that in a little bit. And some of these immature neurons will be able to move to a final location. So there's going to be a lot of transport of these neurons around, and as they extend out, their axons are going to grow as well too. So the axons are growing as a result of stimulus from particular chemicals, and these chemicals take the form of hormones and other types of proteins in order to help cause the axons to actually develop and move out. So you already know that your spinal cord forms kind of the basis of your central nervous system, and then you have all these neurons that are extending out into their peripheral nervous system, which basically help you to sense things and help you to do things. So that process actually starts from here as well too. You end up getting nerve cells or neurons that are extending out from the neural tube, and they grow to other parts of the embryo to become sensory or motor neurons. Multiple synapses. So connections can start to be made between these neurons, and if those connections are not needed, so here you have one nerve cell that's connecting to another nerve cell, there's a synapse here, that's a gap in between. This is the axon terminal of one and the dendrite of another. If you don't need those particular connections, then you actually end up losing them. And you don't just lose the connections between certain synapses. If neurons are not actually used, the neurons actually degrade and start to break down, and the entire nerve cell can be removed as well too. That's a process called neural pruning. And finally, we just have to understand the idea that the nervous system is plastic, or we talk about the plasticity of the nervous system, because the nervous system can change with experience. The very idea that we can build more synapses, more connections between different neurons, and also that we can lose neurons when we're not really using them. So if you learned something, like, let's see, when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time listening to CDs to try to figure out how to play them on guitar. And the more that I did that, the more of these synapses were actually formed. And even now, almost 20 years later, I can remember how to play pretty much every song from the Nirvana Nevermind album on guitar. But nowadays, if you ask me to learn a Justin Bieber song, I go and I look it up and I find the guitar tab, and it's all printed there for me. I can play it when I read it, but then after I put it away, because I didn't go through the process of learning and trying to force myself to do that, it just doesn't stick. So same thing with all this stuff and all this vocabulary and all these explanations. You can't learn it just by reading it and then thinking that it's going to stick. You need to quiz yourself constantly, and you need to basically recall this information and use it in different scenarios and challenge yourself to try and make connections between these types of topics and other topics spread throughout the syllabus as well too. So may your IB biology learning experience be full of plastic.